Okay, we have with us Rob Geist-Pinfold, who's a lecturer in peace and security at Durham University, to talk about this. Welcome back to Al Jazeera. So, what do you think is behind Israel's further occupation and now expansion of the settlements and the occupied Golan Heights? Are we looking at a permanent occupation going forward?
Well, I think what we're looking at is a case of the military basically responding to events in Syria, feeling like they don't have control of what's happening on the ground, and then expanding that territory, the territory they hold, into the area that was previously the buffer zone. And with Israel's press and mainstream media and public attention directed elsewhere, this is very much not covered in the Israeli media, by the way. I think what we're seeing is the military basically doing what a military does, establishing facts on the ground, taking areas that it thinks would give it a tactical advantage in any future combat or conflict, for example, which is why we're now seeing the Israeli military expand. Originally, they took around 250 square kilometres. That was the demilitarised zone. Now they could have up to 450 square kilometres. Obviously, reports are conflicting, but alongside those villages, we're also hearing that the Israeli military has expanded its control to the river basin there, the Al-Wahda Dam, and this is a strategic dam not just for Syria, but it also supplies water to Jordan. So it seems like the Israelis is a case of the military being left to determine facts on the ground while everyone else is distracted, but this could have very, very significant geopolitical ramifications.
Like what?
Well, for example, this is something that puts pressure on the Jordanians. This is something that puts pressure on the Syrians. I actually think al-Shara was very, very smart here when he came out and said that, you know, we're not looking for conflict with Israel. He basically rolled the ball into the international community's court to say, we need help, we need action, we need you to help restrain and constrain Israel. That hasn't happened yet. The question is if we're going to see a more decisive stance from Turkey. We know that Turkey are closer to HTS than any other world player. So I suspect al-Shara and the HDS administration will be pressuring Erdogan and his government to either take some direct statements against Israel themselves, or pressuring Washington to do the same.
I mean, this is all, of course, in violation of Syrian sovereignty, is it not? And it's a violation of the international agreement signed between Syria and Israel. And that is what we've heard from several foreign powers. But are these words enough to stop these violations? And when it comes to HTS and the new administration, in the future, do you expect to see more of a pushback from the government in Damascus?
Well, HDS have actually said some really pragmatic and interesting things. They have said that they want the UN peacekeepers back. They said they want the agreement upheld. Don't forget, this is an organisation that was previously affiliated to ISIL and Al-Qaeda, now basically saying we adhere to Security Council and UN regulations and resolutions, and it's Israel that aren't doing so. Those words from the international community, frankly, aren't enough. They're looking elsewhere. They're distracted, just as Israel and the Israeli public is distracted. So they're going to need more, because at the end of the day, Syria has so many internal challenges. Al-Shara really has to do a lot internally to stamp down his authority, to show that he's in charge. But at the end of the day, there are three foreign powers that are technically, at the moment, occupying Syria. You have Israel now expanding its zone of control. You have Turkey with a 100-mile buffer zone in northern Syria, and you have around 900 US troops in eastern Syria. So this is a tremendous to-do list for any government, regardless of what its ideology is. And at the end of the day, it's a big open question as to whether HTS will actually be able to exert power and influence over Syria to be considered a legitimate government.
What we saw today as well is that Syria has taken a small step towards resuming commercial air traffic, right? We saw that domestic flight take off between Damascus and Aleppo. Is that significant to you, and what do you read into that?
Well, I think the domestic flights are a return to the Assad status quo. Now, a lot of the time when governments fall, things get worse very quickly, no matter how bad the previous government was, just because of all the instability and chaos. And I think what HTS are trying to do is to get things to at least the Assad status quo, which was not a good status quo, but they don't want it to be any worse. They don't want the population to feel like they were better off under Assad. But we are hearing that, you know, there might be a way forward to take things even further. So Turkey has recently, the people who've looked on the Turkish Airlines website have recently seen that you will soon be able to book direct flights from Turkey to Aleppo and to Damascus. Now, that would be a big game changer, but it would actually follow in line with what Turkey's been doing. Turkey has been the first state to legitimize contact with HTS. Their intelligence chief last week, Ibrahim Kalin, he visited Damascus and met with al-Shara very, very publicly, something that intelligence chiefs don't do normally. Afterwards, we saw a flurry of diplomatic activity from the UK, Germany, France, and many other players in the region, all rushing to meet al-Shara. So the question is, if Turkey is allowing these direct flights, will other countries then follow suit? And will that lead to sanctions relief for Syria and its battered economy?
OK. Rob, Geist-Pinfold, thank you so much for joining us.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.